Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Students, this is our last lecture of the series of lectures on the novel Wuthering Heights. This is chapter number 28, and here I go. On the fifth day, Zilla, the housekeeper, frees Nellie from the bedroom and tells her that village is awash in gossip that Nellie and Kathy have been lost in the marshes. Nellie searches the house for Kathy but instead finds Linton. He tells her that Kathy has been locked up into another room and that he and Kathy are married. Then he exerts that he owns all of Kathy's inheritance since Edgar is close to death. Heathcliff's revenge appears to be complete here, and the formerly pathetic Linton shows his less pleasant side as well. Nellie rushes from Wuthering Heights back to the Thrushcross Grange. She tells the dying Edgar that Kathy is safe and will soon be back at the Grange. She then sends a group of servants to Wuthering Heights to get Kathy, but they fail and return without her. Meanwhile, in order to keep Kathy's inheritance from Heathcliff, Edgar decides to place the inheritance in the hands of trustees. He sends for his lawyer, Mr. Green, so he can change his will. Here we find Edgar trying to use the bedrock of civil society, the law, to try to thwart Heathcliff's efforts of inheriting his property. A while later, Nellie hears someone arrive. She thinks that it's Mr. Green, but it is actually Kathy who has escaped Wuthering Heights with the help of Linton. Kathy goes to Edgar and spends a few moments with him before he dies. Edgar dies, content, believing that Kathy is happily married to Linton. Linton's decision to find Kathy shows that he does love Kathy in his way. And we may also notice that Edgar dies before changing his will, meaning that Heathcliff has gotten what he wanted or desired or planned. Mr. Green arrives that evening. Mr. Green is the lawyer of Edgar. That evening, he arrives there. He takes over the house and dismisses all the servants but Nellie. He also tries to have Edgar buried in the chapel, but Nellie intervenes, knowing that Edgar states that he wanted to be buried next to his wife, Catherine. In the end, uh, Edgar's love for Catherine is stronger than his ties to his class or family. He prefers being buried near to her wife to be buried in that traditional upper class graveyard or cemetery. What he wants most of all is just to be buried near, shows the stronger feelings for her former wife. Uh, in the next chapter, we see that after Edgar's funeral, Heathcliff comes to the Grange to bring Kathy back to Wuthering Heights. He says that he has punished Linton for helping Kathy escape, and that he expects Kathy to work to earn her keep at Wuthering Heights. Despite his triumph or having done or having served his revenge, Heathcliff seems to still want revenge, some more cruelties. He wants to inflict some more pain to the people around. Kathy responds that she and Linton love each other. While Heathcliff is so loveless and alone, she adds that, however miserable you make us, we shall still have the revenge of thinking that your cruelty arises from your greater misery. This shows a bold and brave side of Kathy's personality, and her response shows that she recognizes that Heathcliff's quest for revenge has corrupted him. He is totally been engulfed or absorbed by his desire of revenge. As we know what Bacon has said, that one who studies revenge keeps his wounds green. So it's a wild kind of justice, revenge. So he's suffering from this sense or this state of mind where he is totally been engulfed or absorbed by his uh, uh, his quest for revenge, and he has lost all sense of good and bad. What he always wanted was to be with Catherine, and revenge didn't get him that. After getting or serving his revenge upon these people, he still finds himself failed in getting Catherine back. So it has become a futile or sterile or fruitless effort to inflict pain upon such people for no good reason. As Kathy packs, Nellie asks Heathcliff to let her be the housekeeper at Wuthering Heights because she wants to stay with Kathy. Heathcliff does not answer to this request, instead telling Nellie that while the sexton was digging Edgar's grave, Heathcliff bribed the man to dig up Catherine's grave and remove the wall of her coffin that faced away from Edgar's grave. He then says that when he dies, he'll be buried on the side of Catherine's grave with the facing wall of his own coffin also removed. He wants to be so united or so much in in even in if I am using a proper word, company of Catherine, even um, after his own death, that he wants to remove the facing wall of the coffins, not only of Catherine but also of his own self, own coffin, so that he may be looking or maybe facing Catherine while he would be buried there. He adds that Catherine's ghost has haunted him for the 18 years since she died, but that he could never reach her. And if we further comment on Kathy's comment, is clearly right where she says that um however miserable you make us, we shall still have the revenge of thinking that your cruelty arises from your greater misery. You are so miserable, you are so poor that whatever you have done to others cannot bring back the person you are looking for, or you want to get him or her back. The person is Catherine, of course. So this shows his misery that whatever he may do, he cannot bring her back. Heathcliff's love for Catherine remains the sole important thing for him. There's no purpose of his life. There's no thing that he wants to obtain or has not obtained yet, except one thing, Catherine. So it is so important that he is willing to disturb her grave in order to find a way to be closer to her, even not in life, than in death. What should he do now, even when she has died, and he thinks that it's a kind of illusion on the part of Heathcliff, where he thinks that after death, when they get back to life again, he and Catherine would be united, or would be there, would arise uh, simultaneously or at the same time. This is a kind of illusion. This is the extent of his love or passion for obsession uh, with Catherine's love. As they leave, Kathy asks Nellie to visit her at Wuthering Heights, but Heathcliff tells Nellie never to come to the Heights, and that if he needs her, he'll come to her at the Grange. Heathcliff is still seeking revenge, though all who have wronged him are dead. Now he is extending his revenge. He is more into revenge than seeking something else. The next chapter is chapter number 30, where we find Nellie telling Lockwood that she hasn't seen Kathy since that day and only gets news about her from Zillah, the housekeeper. Heathcliff forbade anyone at the Heights to be kind to Kathy and made her nurse Linton herself until he died. After Linton's death, Kathy refuses to spend time with Zillah or Hareton, though she and Hareton do often argue. Nellie wishes Kathy could come live with her in a cottage Nellie has taken, but knows it will never happen. She says that only another marriage could save Kathy, but such a thing seems impossible right now, especially until or unless Heathcliff is there. As a woman, Kathy is trapped without legal rights to defend herself from Heathcliff. At this point, the novel seems to be setting up the possibility that Lockwood will save Kathy from her fate, like as it was hinted in the previous uh, chapters, that he may, or Nellie too has felt the uh, danger of Lockwood falling in love with Kathy, that he may um, marry Kathy and save her from her this miserable plight. If only Lockwood would act boldly, recklessly, with passion. And but we know Lockwood is a civilized city man who dislikes such shows of emotion. He finds them grotesque and strange, and so rather than try to save the beautiful Kathy and win her love, he goes to London. This is what sane people do in such situations. They do not succumb to their emotions, so-called primitive emotions, according to these such अहले खिर्द इनको कहा जाता है उर्दू में तो he would not do such thing. In his diary, Lockwood writes that Nellie has finished her story here. He says that he has recovered from his illness and will soon ride to Wuthering Heights to tell Heathcliff that he will be leaving Thrushcross Grange and going to London, where he will be free of the strange people of Grange and Heights. So, this is what he does or decided instead of faint hope that he may save Kathy from this miserable condition. Next chapter is chapter number 31, where we see Lockwood goes to Wuthering Heights to tell Heathcliff of his decision to leave Thrushcross Grange. He also carries a letter to Kathy from Nellie, but Hareton intercepts it before he can give it to her. When Kathy starts to cry, Hareton returns the letter. The incident with the letter gives a hint that Hareton's feelings for Kathy are not malicious. He gets angry at her, but also seems not to want to hurt her. Lockwood also learns that Heathcliff has taken Kathy's books. Kathy adds that Hareton has gathered some of her favorite books and tries to read them, but she mocks his faulty efforts. Hareton, ashamed, gathers the books and throws them in the fire. As future events show, Hareton has gathered Kathy's books because he wants to learn to read to become more civilized. And it seems impossible right now. He wants to be good in the eyes of Kathy. Hareton returns and says as soon as he enters the Heathcliff returns. And the moment he enters, uh, Hareton bears such a striking resemblance to Catherine that it causes him physical and emotional pain even to look at Hareton. He does not even want to look at him. Heathcliff wished to be haunted by Catherine. Now he is being haunted by her. Everywhere, whatever he sees, every smell or everything reminds him of Catherine, and he is much tired of this haunting of the ghost of Catherine. After a rather dull and unpleasant meal, Lockwood leaves. On the way back to Grange, he muses on how lucky Cathy would have been Had she fallen in love with him and let him take her away to a more pleasant place than Wuthering Heights? Lockwood's musings are delusional. The idea that Kathy would be happy with him, emotionless and civilized, as he is ludicrous himself. He is a practical kind of man. He cannot understand such tender and emotional feelings of others and cannot harbor or uh, tune in such feelings for someone else. Next chapter is chapter number 32. Here we find 6 months later, Lockwood returns to the area and pays a visit at Wuthering Heights. He finds to his purpose that uh, he surprise it's a kind of surprise when he finds that Nellie now lives there. She tells him about what happened after he left. 2 weeks after Lockwood left, Zilla finds a new job and Heathcliff asks Nellie to take her place, the place of the housekeeper. Soon after Nellie arrives, Kathy admits to her that she feels she feels guilty for mocking Hareton. Hareton and Kathy are similar to Heathcliff and Catherine with one crucial difference, and that difference is Hareton and Kathy both learn to feel remorse for their aggressive and condescending actions. One day, Hareton accidentally shoots himself while working, and Kathy has to tend to him. At first, they argue often, but eventually they come to an understanding and start to get along. Kathy gives Hareton a gift of a book and promises to teach him to read and not to mock him. Nellie says that the two have come to love each other and looks forward to an eventual marriage between them. The flashback story has ended here, and we are seeing the events happen in the present right now. Kathy has always been attracted to men she could nurse and mother. She has got some sort of motherly feelings or nursing sort of feelings for others. So you may say also kind feelings. But unlike Linton, who was a sniveling weakling, Harriton is her equal. Kathy realizes this as evidenced when she offers to teach Harriton to read rather than look down on him for the status that has been forced on him. She now sees him for his potential. She now sees beyond class, and together the two of them find a balance between nature and civilization. Now she is seeing him in a new light. Next is chapter number 33. Here, the morning after, Kathy gives Hareton the book. She and Heathcliff get into an argument at breakfast over her inheritance. Hareton takes her side. Heathcliff grabs Kathy and nearly hits her, but then suddenly lets her go. Her eyes remind him of Catherine. In the past, Heathcliff would have just hit Kathy, but his visions of Catherine are changing him, blunting his need for revenge. That same night, he sees Kathy and Hareton sitting together, and they both remind him of Catherine. All of these reminders of Catherine torment him, and he admits to Nellie that he no longer much cares about talking about his revenge on Kathy and Hareton. Being haunted by Catherine torments Heathcliff, but it is also what he always wanted, and so he no longer feels a need for vengeance, breaking the cycle of revenge and allowing Kathy and Hareton to live in a peace. He has given up his feelings of revenge. This is chapter number 34, the final chapter of the novel. Here we find things summing up to its ultimate or logical conclusion. Heathcliff withdraws from the world and eats just on one meal a day. Note, The similarity to Catherine's own fast in chapter 11, where she stopped or ceased to eating for 3 days. A few nights later, he spends the entire night walking outside Heathcliff. When he returns to Wuthering Heights, Cathy remarks that he is actually acting pleasantly. He tells Nellie that last night I was on the threshold of hell, today I am within sight of my heaven. It is important to note that the similarity to Catherine's own night outside after Heathcliff left. Heathcliff's heaven simply is to be with Catherine. So it indicates an impending death of Heathcliff, or foreshadowing the death of Heathcliff. Heathcliff refuses all food and demands that he be left entirely alone. The next morning, at breakfast, Heathcliff terrifies Nellie when he seems to see an apparition. She can see nothing, but it seems to her that Heathcliff is communicating with it. That night, Heathcliff again seems to be speaking with a ghost. Nellie hears him say, Catherine. When Nellie speaks with Heathcliff, he reminds her of his burial wishes. Now, Heathcliff's refusal to eat is identical to Catherine's. Again, some similarities. As his actions mirror Catherine's, he begins to actually see and speak with her. He is being haunted by her just as he always wished. The next day, Heathcliff locks himself into his room and refuses to even see the doctor. The next morning, Nellie uses another key to get into the room and finds Heathcliff dead and soaking wet. He had thrown open the window to let the rain come down on him. In his final act, Heathcliff opens the window to connect with nature and with Catherine, and hence he dies. Heathcliff is buried as he wanted, next to Catherine, while Cathy and Harriet are soon to be married and will move to Thrushcross Grange. Heathcliff's death lets him to be with Catherine and allows Cathy and Harriet to also be together. Lockwood leaves Wuthering Heights and walks through the moors to the churchyard where Heathcliff, Catherine, and Edgar are buried. He writes that though the local villagers say that they have seen Heathcliff's ghost and another spirit walking the moors together, he wondered how anyone could ever imagine unquiet slumbers for the sleepers in the quiet earth. Lockwood now sees nature as quiet, since nothing now stands in the way of Heathcliff or Catherine, who are themselves forces of nature in their incredible and all consuming love for each other from being together. So, students, this was our last lecture on the novel Wuthering Heights. Uh, if you have any questions regarding the happenings of the novel, you may ask me. Thank you very much.